Imagine a garden so efficient, so resourceful, that it not only feeds an entire family all year round, but does it without fancy tools, store-bought fertilizers, or modern technology. No chemical sprays, no expensive gadgets. Just pure, time-tested wisdom passed down for generations. The Amish have mastered this art, using surprising, yet incredibly simple techniques that you won't believe actually work. Think copper pennies that keep plants healthy, matchsticks that enrich the soil, and eggshells that double as seed starters. Curious? Stick around. By the end of this video, you'll see gardening in a whole new light. The Amish mindset, the secret to sustainable gardening. First things first, Amish gardening isn't just about growing food. It's a lifestyle, a mindset. It's about working with nature, not against it. No shortcuts, no synthetic boosters. Just a deep understanding of how soil, plants, and weather work together. And trust me, they've got it down to a science. While most people rush to buy fertilizers and pesticides, the Amish rely on patience, compost, and natural pest repellents. Their approach isn't about quick fixes. It's about creating an ecosystem that takes care of itself. And the results? Huge harvests, healthier plants, and rich soil. It practically grows food on its own. But here's the kicker. This philosophy extends beyond gardening. It's about self-sufficiency, resilience, and respect for the land. Think about it. When was the last time you truly depended on your garden for survival? For the Amish, it's a way of life, a tradition that ensures food security no matter the season. They don't just grow food, they cultivate a connection to the earth that most of us have lost. Another thing? They aren't wasting time scrolling through gardening forums or watching hours of YouTube tutorials. They know what works because their ancestors have been perfecting these methods for centuries. They don't need miracle fertilizers or the latest gardening gadgets. Their secret weapon? Observation. They read the soil like a book, adjusting their methods based on what nature tells them. That's why their gardens flourish year after year. And let's talk about their soil. Most gardens rely on bagged compost or chemical-laden plant food, but Amish soil is different. It's alive, packed with nutrients, crawling with beneficial microbes, and rich in organic matter. This isn't by accident. It's the result of years of careful composting, crop rotation, and using every natural resource available. They feed their soil, and in return, the soil feeds them. Even their watering methods are designed for efficiency. Instead of drenching their plants with a hose, they use drip irrigation techniques that conserve water and direct moisture straight to the roots. This means less waste, fewer weeds, and stronger, more drought-resistant plants. Genius, right? And let's not forget about their incredible ability to plan ahead. Amish gardeners don't just plant for today. They think seasons ahead. They're always considering how to extend their growing season, whether it's through cold frames, mulching, or choosing hardy heirloom plant varieties that thrive in their climate. By the time the first frost hits, their pantries are stocked, their root cellars are full, and their gardens are already prepped for the next cycle. No last-minute scrambles, no midwinter grocery store runs, just the peace of knowing that nature has provided everything they need. The unexpected hacks that keep their gardens thriving. All right, let's talk Amish gardening hacks. These might sound old school, but trust me, these methods outperform most store-bought solutions. They're simple, effective, and best of all, completely natural. No harmful chemicals, no unnecessary expenses, just brilliant ways to work with nature. Let's dive into these genius tricks. Copper pennies for plant health. Ever noticed how old pennies turn green over time? That's oxidation at work, and it turns out plants absolutely love it. The Amish figured out that copper acts as a natural fungicide, protecting plants from diseases like mildew, rot, and blight. Instead of using chemical sprays, they bury a few copper pennies in the soil near plant roots or drop them into watering cans to create a natural, slow-release fungicide. It's like an immune system boost for plants, helping them grow strong and disease-resistant. And here's the kicker. Copper also deters slugs and snails. Those slimy garden invaders hate crawling over copper surfaces, so scattering old pennies around plants keeps them at bay. Who knew spare change could save your garden? Eggshells. Before you toss those eggshells in the trash, wait. The Amish have been using them as tiny, nutrient-packed seedling pots for generations. They carefully crack the eggs, leaving most of the shell intact, rinse them out, and poke a small drainage hole in the bottom. Then, they fill the shells with soil, plant seeds inside, and let nature do the rest. When the seedlings are ready for transplanting, they plant the entire eggshell in the garden, where it naturally decomposes, releasing calcium and other minerals into the soil. It's brilliantly simple. No plastic waste, no transplant shock, and a nutrient boost built right in. Think of it as a slow-release fertilizer and starter pot in one. Boiled egg water as fertilizer. Speaking of eggs, did you know that the water left after boiling them is a hidden goldmine for plants? Most people pour it down the drain, but the Amish see it as liquid plant food. That leftover water is rich in calcium and minerals that plants crave. Once it cools, they use it to water their gardens, especially for vegetables like tomatoes, peppers, and squash that need extra calcium to prevent issues like blossom end rot. And the best part? It's free, requires zero effort, and works like magic. Next time you boil eggs, don't waste the water. Your plants will thank you. Matchsticks for magnesium. Here's a gardening trick that sounds crazy, but works like a charm. Burying matchsticks near plant roots to boost magnesium levels in the soil. If your plants have yellowing leaves, slow growth, or weak stems, they're probably magnesium deficient. Instead of buying expensive fertilizers, the Amish push a few matchsticks head down into the soil. The phosphorus and magnesium in the match heads slowly dissolve, enriching the soil over time. It's a simple, hands-off solution that saves money and strengthens plants naturally. And guess what? This trick is especially great for roses, peppers, and citrus trees, which thrive with extra magnesium in the soil. Who knew such a tiny tool could make such a big difference? Human hair to deter pests. Yes, you read that right. Hair clippings are a secret Amish weapon against garden pests. The logic behind it is simple. Deer, rabbits, and rodents hate the smell of humans. Sprinkling hair around plants tricks these animals into thinking humans are nearby, keeping them far away from your garden. Where do they get the hair? From hairbrushes, barber shops, or even their own family haircuts. Nothing goes to waste. They scatter it around the perimeter of their garden beds or tie small pouches of hair to stakes. Not only does this method repel unwanted critters, but as the hair breaks down, it releases nitrogen into the soil, acting as a natural fertilizer. That's a win-win, pest control and plant nutrition all in one, growing more in less space. Ever looked at your garden and thought, if only I had more room? The Amish don't have that problem. They've mastered the art of getting bigger harvests from smaller spaces. You don't have massive fields? No problem. They've developed brilliant space-saving tricks that let them grow more food without expanding their garden footprint. It's all about working smarter, not harder. And these methods can turn even the tiniest backyard into a food-producing powerhouse. Let's dive into their best-kept secrets. Growing potatoes in barrels. Potatoes are a staple in Amish kitchens, but instead of using up valuable garden real estate, they grow them upwards, in barrels, baskets, or even large sacks. The method is simple, but incredibly effective. They start with a few inches of soil at the bottom of a barrel. plant the seed potatoes, and as the plants grow, they keep adding layers of soil. The magic? Instead of just one level of potatoes growing underground, multiple layers form. By the time harvest rolls around, they simply tip the barrel over and outpour a massive pile of potatoes. It's like digging for buried treasure, except the reward is fresh, homegrown spuds. This method not only saves space, but also keeps potatoes protected from pests and diseases lurking in the soil. Plus, the vertical design makes harvesting a breeze. No backbreaking digging required. Newspaper and lemon half seed starters. Seed starting trays, plastic cups. Number: the Amish use what nature and the recycling bin provide. One of their favorite tricks is using newspaper and lemon halves as biodegradable seed starters. Newspapers are torn into strips, molded into small pots, and filled with soil. As the seedlings grow, the entire newspaper pot is planted directly into the ground, where it breaks down naturally, enriching the soil. The same goes for lemon halves. After squeezing out the juice, they hollow out the peels, fill them with soil, and start seeds inside. The lemon peel slowly decomposes, releasing nutrients and keeping pests at bay with its citrusy scent. It's eco-friendly, cost-effective, and completely waste-free, exactly how the Amish like it. Drip irrigation without fancy equipment. Keeping plants hydrated is essential, but the Amish don't waste a drop. Instead of installing costly irrigation systems, they use buried clay pots, old bottles, or even repurposed milk. Jugs to create their own low-tech drip irrigation. Here's how it works. A clay pot with a porous surface is buried near the plants, filled with water, and left uncovered. Over time, water slowly seeps into the soil, delivering moisture directly to the roots. No runoff, no waste. Just deep, efficient watering that plants absolutely love. Another method? Plastic bottles with tiny holes poked in the sides are buried upside down next to plants. When filled, the water trickles out gradually, keeping the soil consistently moist, a lifesaver during dry spells. It's simple, yet incredibly effective, allowing plants to get just the right amount of water without drowning or drying out. And the best part? You'll water less often and still get thriving plants. Companion planting. If you've ever had a plant struggle to grow, it might just need the right neighbor. The Amish swear by companion planting, a method where certain plants are grown together to help each other thrive. Some plants repel pests, others improve soil health, and some simply boost the flavor and growth of their neighbors. Take tomatoes and basil, for example, not just a perfect combo for pasta, but also in the garden. Basil repels insects that attack tomato plants, while also enhancing their flavor. Marigolds, often planted around vegetable beds, act as a natural insect repellent, keeping aphids, nematodes, and beetles far away. Meanwhile, corn, beans, and squash, known as the Three Sisters, support each other in the best way. Corn provides a natural trellis for beans, beans fix nitrogen into the soil, and squash spreads out to block weeds and retain moisture. It's why the Amish get bigger, healthier harvests without using pesticides or synthetic fertilizers. Trellises and vertical growing. If you can't grow out, why not grow up? The Amish take full advantage of vertical space with trellises, arbors, and climbing structures. Cucumbers, beans, peas, and even melons are trained to climb instead of sprawl, saving ground space for other crops. Wooden trellises, sturdy sticks, and even simple rope structures are used to guide plants upward, allowing for better air circulation, easier harvesting, and less risk of disease. And get this, the Amish sometimes grow squash on rooftops. In some communities, they plant vining squash varieties along fences, or even on the sloped roofs of sheds. The vines sprawl out, soaking up the sun, while the big, heavy fruits hang down, ripening perfectly without touching the ground. No rotting, no pests munching away, just big, healthy squash hanging like ornaments in the air. natural pest control that actually works. If you've ever battled garden pests, you know how frustrating it can be. The Amish have figured out simple, natural ways to keep them away. Pests can turn a thriving garden into a battlefield overnight. But the Amish have mastered the art of winning without waging chemical warfare. Instead of dousing plants with synthetic pesticides, they use nature against itself, crafting homemade repellents and clever deterrents that keep insects, weeds, and even larger critters in check. It's not about quick fixes. It's about creating an environment where pests simply don't want to stick around. One of their most effective and eye-catching strategies? Marigolds. These bright, cheerful flowers are more than just garden decorations. They're natural pest-fighting machines. Aphids, nematodes, and mosquitoes can't stand them, so Amish farmers plant them around vegetable patches like a living force field. They also attract beneficial insects like ladybugs and bees, which help maintain balance in the garden. When it comes to weeds and pests, the Amish don't reach for store-bought sprays. They raid their own kitchens. Vinegar is their secret weapon against stubborn weeds, drying them out without poisoning the surrounding soil. A simple spritz of white vinegar on dandelions or crabgrass, and those unwelcome intruders shrivel up within days. Meanwhile, baking soda, yes, the same stuff used for baking bread, is a powerful, all-natural barrier against crawling pests. A sprinkle around the base of delicate plants creates a hostile environment for bugs, preventing infestations before they even start. It's pest control without the toxic side effects. Garlic and onions aren't just for flavoring dinner, they're also garden protectors. The Amish blend them with water to create a pungent, all-natural bug spray that makes insects think twice before feasting on crops. This homemade concoction repels everything from aphids to beetles, and unlike chemical sprays, it won't harm pollinators like bees and butterflies. It's a simple trick, but incredibly effective. And best of all, it costs next to nothing. They also use bars of strong-smelling soap, hung from branches or placed near crops, to confuse animals like deer, making them hesitant to come too close. For those dreaded caterpillar invasions, the Amish rely on an unusual but highly effective method: handpicking. Instead of spraying pesticides, they take a more hands-on approach, plucking off caterpillars and tossing them into buckets of soapy water. It's tedious, sure, but it prevents harmful chemicals from entering the food supply and keeps gardens healthier in the long run. Diatomaceous earth is another must-have in an Amish garden. This fine powdery substance, made from crushed fossilized algae, looks harmless but is deadly to pests. When insects crawl over it, the microscopic particles slice through their exoskeletons, dehydrating them from the inside out. It's an odorless, non-toxic way to control pests without harming beneficial insects like bees and butterflies. Even pest-prone plants like tomatoes, cucumbers, and squash get extra layers of protection. The Amish often grow them on trellises or vertical supports, keeping the fruits off the ground and out of reach from hungry critters like slugs and rodents. Elevating the plants also improves airflow, reducing the risk of mold and fungal infections. It's a simple trick that yields healthier crops and fewer problems. For fungal issues, the Amish skip the chemical fungicides and use milk instead. That's right, a simple mix of milk and water, sprayed onto plants, can stop mildew in its tracks. The natural enzymes in milk fight off harmful spores, keeping leaves healthy without synthetic chemicals. At the end of the day, the Amish know that a thriving garden isn't about spraying chemicals every time a bug shows up. Their pest control methods may be old-fashioned, but they're smarter, safer, and more sustainable than anything you'll find in a bottle. With a little patience and the right techniques, any gardener can create a space that naturally resists pests without ever needing a drop of synthetic pesticide. Preserving the harvest for year-round food. Growing food is one thing. Making it last all year? That's an art. The Amish don't just harvest crops and hope for the best. They have time-tested methods that keep their pantry stocked even in the dead of winter. No supermarkets, no freezers packed with frozen dinners, just smart, old-school techniques that work. Every fruit, vegetable, and herb is carefully stored, dried, canned, or fermented, ensuring nothing goes to waste. If you've ever wanted to eat homegrown food all year long without relying on modern conveniences, this is how the Amish do it. Root cellars for natural refrigeration. Refrigerators? The Amish laugh at the idea. Instead of relying on power-hungry appliances, they store their food the way nature intended, underground. Root cellars dug deep into the earth maintain a cool, stable temperature year-round, keeping produce fresh for months without spoiling. Potatoes, carrots, onions, beets, turnips, apples, all tucked away in wooden crates or sand-filled bins to lock in moisture and prevent shriveling. But it's not just about tossing food in a hole and calling it a day. Ventilation is key. Amish root cellars are carefully designed with small air vents to regulate humidity and prevent mold. Some families even store milk and homemade cheeses in their root cellars, keeping them cool without a single watt of electricity. And here's a little trick. Hanging cabbages upside down in a root cellar keeps them crisp for months, long after grocery store versions have wilted away. Drying and canning. Everything. If you walked into an Amish pantry, you'd see rows of colorful glass jars lining the shelves, each packed with summer's bounty. Canning isn't just a hobby for them, it's a way of life. Tomatoes become rich sauces, cucumbers turn into pickles, and green beans get packed in brine for the long winter ahead. Every jar is a burst of homegrown flavor, waiting to be opened when fresh produce is out of season. But the Amish don't stop at canning. They dry everything too. Herbs like basil, thyme, and oregano are bundled and hung from wooden beams until they're perfectly crisp, ready to season meals year-round. Fruits like apples, pears, and cherries are sliced and sun-dried or placed in old-fashioned dehydrators, creating naturally sweet snacks without added sugar or preservatives. Even meats are preserved this way, turned into jerky or smoked cuts that last for months. Another clever trick? Drying pumpkin and squash into powder. The Amish slice these vegetables thin, dry them completely, and then grind them into a fine powder. When mixed with water, it recreates the creamy texture of fresh pumpkin, perfect for pies, soups, and bread, even in the middle of winter. Fermenting for extra nutrition. Fermentation isn't just for wine and beer. It's one of the Amish's favorite ways to preserve food while making it healthier. Pickles, sauerkraut, kimchi, and fermented vegetables not only last for months, but are also packed with gut-friendly probiotics that boost digestion and immunity. The Amish take cabbages straight from the garden, shred them finely, and pack them into large wooden barrels with salt. Over time, the natural bacteria in the cabbage work their magic, turning it into flavor-packed, nutrient-rich sauerkraut. And trust me, once you've had homemade Amish sauerkraut, store-bought versions will never taste the same again. Fermenting is also how they preserve milk without refrigeration. Instead of tossing extra milk, they let it naturally ferment into buttermilk, kefir, or cheese. It's an ancient practice that not only extends shelf life, but enhances flavor and nutritional value. Some Amish communities even ferment apple cider into vinegar, which they use for everything from cooking and cleaning to natural medicine. Cold storage and ice houses. Ever wondered how people kept food cold before freezers? The Amish still use ice houses, insulated buildings where blocks of harvested ice are packed in sawdust or straw to keep meat, dairy, and other perishables fresh for months. The ice, cut from frozen lakes in winter, lasts deep into the summer, acting as a natural freezer without a single plug or wire. Larger Amish communities sometimes share ice houses, ensuring that even in the hottest months, there's a place to store perishables. It's low-tech, incredibly effective, and 100% off-grid, making the most of every scrap. Nothing goes to waste in an Amish household. apple peels and cores, boiled into homemade apple cider vinegar. Corn cobs, used to make broth or fuel wood-burning stoves. Even eggshells have a purpose, crushed and added to the soil for extra calcium. And let's talk about bone broth, a staple in Amish kitchens. Instead of tossing out bones after a meal, they simmer them for hours with vegetables and herbs, creating rich, nutrient-dense broths that are perfect for soups, stews, and sipping on cold days. Even leftover bread isn't wasted. It's dried into breadcrumbs, turned into croutons, or soaked in milk for baking. The mindset is simple. If something can be used, it will be used. The Amish don't just garden, they live it. Their methods are simple but insanely effective, proving that you don't need chemicals, fancy tools, or big budgets to grow a thriving year-round garden. So why not try some of these tricks in your own backyard? Let me know in the comments which one blew your mind the most. And if you want more crazy gardening tips, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Until next time.